Thank you, Rick. I didn't know I'd be coronated today, but here we are, right? Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Well, I made you co-host, so I'm going to turn it to you. It's all yours, and I'll close out the call when you're done.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen here and tell me thumbs up, Rick, if this is showing here.
Yes, I can see it well.
Okay, great. Let's see here. So some of you are old timers with Noni, and some of you are newer. So for the old timers who may already know some of these things, just sit back and enjoy. And those of you who this might be new for, hopefully it'll be helpful to you. But I'm going to talk, like Rick said, about the power of Noni. And here I just shown a picture of some of the brands, NEWAGE Noni products that we make here in this building that I'm speaking from. And we've been actually at this for quite a long time. I've been doing research on the Noni plant and Noni fruit juice and seeds and leaves and everything about Noni for 24 years now. And I just want to let you know, kind of a brief, not get into my story too much, but when I began this, when I began working for Mirinda, which was the company that launched Noni Tahitian Noni juice back in 1996, I began working the next year, 1997. They had a brand new research and development department, and I said I was going to give this a 1-year trial. University is one of the grad program, College of Pharmacy. I kind of took a little detour to do this research on this fruit named Noni. I said I give it 1 year again, and if I didn't find it, I'd move on, go back to my original plan. Well, that was 24 years ago, so we found something. I'll tell you that. We found lots of things. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, what is Noni? You'll see a picture here on the right, somebody harvesting or picking a Noni fruit off of a Noni tree. It's a tropical superfruit. It's the original superfruit. This was the superfruit before superfruits or superfoods, that term was even coined back in the early 2000s. And it's been prized by Polynesians for thousands of years due to its versatility, a lot of different health benefits. And it's something they call a canoe plant. These, when they would go colonize one island to another, they'd have outrigger canoes, limited space. You only took the things that you really needed, the things that were really important. Noni was one of those things that they made sure they had while they were sailing across the ocean, discovering new islands, and also for planting in the ground, so they would have it available to them if it wasn't already available on the island they colonized. Now, it has hundreds of phytonutrients. Sometimes we throw out a number, you might have heard 150, 275 or more. There's hundreds, a lot more than the numbers you've seen. And we're always doing discoveries, finding new compounds, new phytonutrients in Noni, new benefits as well. But they have powerful antioxidant and adaptogenic properties. And especially for a group called Iridoids, which I'll get into a little more in a few more slides. But these are really rare. They're not common to fruits, most fruits. You're not going to find these in an apple or a banana, or grape, and so forth. But there have been thousands of modern scientific research publications on Noni itself to validate these traditional health benefits that the people of Polynesia understood. Now, Noni had a central role among the what we would call, there's a term called materia medica, or basically the herbal medicine of the Polynesian people throughout the Pacific. And there's an expert in Polynesian herbal medicine named Dr. Arthur Whistler. And he's affiliated with the U.S. National Tropical Botanical Garden and the associate professor at the University of Hawaii. And he wrote a book called Polynesian Herbal Medicine. And he described the various plants used throughout the Pacific and their uses. And he said this about Noni. Now, here it says Mirinda, and that's the Mirinda citrifolia is the scientific name for Noni. So he's referring to its scientific name. But he talks about how it had been long employed throughout Polynesia, and it was the most widely and commonly used medicinal plant prior to the arrival of Europeans. They used it for all kinds of things. And if you look at some of these old formulas that people used, and John Wadsworth, the one who first brought this to international attention and to the international market, when he talked about looking at these local healers and their kind of the recipes they had, there was always Noni in there. And noni would be used by itself or to help potentiate or improve the efficacy of other things that they were adding in there, other plants as well. So it's widely used. It had a special place. Now, these products that we make with noni in them, they're simple yet effective. And there's some things I want you to understand about them. They're all natural. We don't need to use preservatives. We don't want to, and we don't need to. Noni does a great job by itself, keeping things fresh, keeping things safe and pure. There are no artificial flavors, and it's backed by science, as I will show you here. Now, noni, I mentioned, it has a wide variety of benefits. Here, just listing some of those. Remember, just some of those, such as promoting overall health and wellness, supporting the immune system, which is one of the early benefits that a lot of people keyed in on and researchers keyed in on to investigate. It boosts energy and endurance. In fact, on the energy and endurance, I'll show some slides there, but I mentioned canoe plants. Well, it was known and recorded. Actually, it was a reference in one of the Smithsonian Institutes here in the United States, one of their publications, where it cites noni being used to help people while they would sail off on their canoes on ocean voyages and long fishing trips to help improve their endurance and keep them mentally awake and vitality going, and so they can manage these long ocean voyages very well. Noni also, it sustains joint health and mobility. I'll share some information on that too. It has cardiovascular benefits, great antioxidant, fights free radicals, powerful adaptogen, and offers mood balancing effects and so much more, so many other things. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that back in 2018, I published a paper. This is indexed on the PubMed, which is the public access version of something called Medline. Now, that's a medical research database maintained by the U.S. National Institutes of Health, their National Library of Medicine. And you can find a copy of this. You can either go to this URL I have listed here, this web address, or you can simply Google this title here, The Potential Health Benefits of Noni Juice, and find a full copy of this. It's available to you if you want to read more about some of the studies I'll talk about, or if you want to refer people to this who want to learn more about noni juice and the benefits and the research and the science that's been peer-reviewed and published behind it. So this is all supported. Everything I'm going to talk about is backed up by science. There's no hype here. It's all real. And it's all been subject to peer review as well, meaning other scientists have had a chance to review this research and make a recommendation to the editors of these scientific journals as to whether this is credible research and should be published. So it's all been checked off, fact-checked, everything like that. Now, back to iridoids. Iridoids are what make noni unique. Now, in fruits, you have kind of 5 main things. You have water. That's why you can make a juice, a fruit juice, orange juice, apple juice, so forth. The bulk of that is water, believe it or not. It's not, it doesn't flow, it's not a big puddle of an apple on your table, but it's full of water, and there's fiber in there that holds that water into place. And the plant cells have a lot of water in there, but water is one of the main things. Now you have carbohydrates. I mentioned fiber. That's dietary fiber, a lot of the carbohydrates in fruits, and then sugar for some of them. That's why they taste sweet. Noni does not actually have a lot of sugar in it. It's pretty tart and sour. For those of you who've had it right off the tree, you'll know that, or tried the noni fruit puree here while you visit us or anywhere else. Fruits contain vitamins. Many people think of vitamin C, in fruits, and that's a very common one in a lot of fruits. And they have minerals. You have calcium, little sodiums, potassium is a major one that you find in plant-based foods, such as fruits and vegetables. So those are kind of classic nutrients. But then there's a group that are not what we consider the classic nutrients, the vitamins and minerals. They're called phytonutrients. Sometimes people call them phytochemicals. But these are things that are produced by the plant, by the fruits themselves, to keep them healthy, to fight off infections, because fruits can, be infected. Plants can be infected too, but they are there to help the plant survive. Interestingly, these phytonutrients are also good for people. And that's where a lot of the benefits of the fruits come from, is these phytonutrients. Now, iridoids are a unique group of phytonutrients. In fruits, you have something many of you might have heard called flavonoids. Noni has flavonoids. Grapes have flavonoids. Blueberries have flavonoids. Oranges, apples, bananas, all of these, a lot of them have flavonoids. But only a few, Noni being one of the few, and then a couple other fruits that we actually use in one of our other products, Max, that I showed you at the very beginning, they contain iridoids. And Noni has its unique blend of iridoids, very rare. Now I'm going to share some examples here of how we came to know the importance of the iridoids in Noni. Now, it's been about 20 years ago, we began funding some research at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And we had these double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials involving people who were heavy cigarette smokers. Hopefully they're not still that way, but they were then. That means these are people who smoke 19 or more cigarettes per day, a pack a day, people. And we wanted to really find out if Tahitian Noni, that's the original one that we offer as well, but if Tahitian Noni juice really could do something for the body that was really significant in a challenging environment. So we found these people who were exposing themselves to cigarette smoke, which causes a lot of damage. Everybody knows that. So this was a 1-month study. We created a placebo. I actually formulated the placebo, and it contained grape and blueberry juice, and it contained some cheese flavoring that was kind of mimicked the Noni flavor. I found one that sort of mimicked the Noni flavor, and we made this placebo. What we wanted to find out is what benefits were coming from Noni. So we had this placebo that had everything in there but the Noni. And then we had divided the people up. One group got Tahitian Noni juice, one group got the placebo. And at the beginning, we drew blood, and they continued to smoke. And then at the end of it, they drank either the Noni juice or the placebo. And then at the end of the study, drew blood again, and we tested the differences. In this first one, what's called aromatic DNA adducts, or it's basically DNA damage from the chemicals in the cigarette smoke. What we found is that the placebo had no effect. Now, grape and blueberry juice have a lot of flavonoids, they're good antioxidants, but they were not strong enough to counter the effects of the cigarette smoke. However, Tahitian Noni, which had the Noni in it, was strong enough to counter the effects of the cigarette smoke. And we saw that actually one serving per day, 30 milliliters or 1 ounce, significantly lowered the amount of DNA damage. It knocked it in half, basically. And this was the DNA damage that we measured in white blood cells. And these are cells of the immune system. So we drew the blood, extracted the white blood cells, and measured the DNA damage. Again, Noni, just after 1 month, while they continued to smoke, big impact on protecting DNA. Now, another one we did was similar design, placebo, 1-month trial, smokers. What we did this time is measure a type of DNA damage that is the result of the oxidative stress caused by the cigarette smoke. So first one was direct chemical action on the DNA. This one was the downstream free radicals, basically, that were produced and what effect they had on the DNA of the white blood cells of these smokers. Again, placebo had no effect, but Tahitian Noni juice with the Noni in it had a significant impact in reducing this type of DNA damage. So we knew that something was going on with Noni that was very unique. And when we started looking at the phytonutrient profile, what did Noni have that the other fruits did not have? And again, the answer was iridoids. And we had done some phytochemical research on that to verify that and to look at amounts and so forth. Then we did this study here to confirm the activity of the iridoids in these clinical trials that we were seeing. So what we did is we took Noni fruit and we isolated directly from the Noni fruit the iridoids that are present. And here you'll see in this graph here at the bottom, there's a blank that means that that's the amount of DNA damage in cells with, just by themselves. We didn't do anything to them. So in this study, I'm showing you results from cells that we did in our laboratories here. My background in pharmacology and toxicology allows me to easily do this kind of research where I can look for things that might damage DNA or protect DNA. So what I did is I took these cells and I exposed them to a carcinogen. That's what 4-NQO is called. It damages DNA as long as all day long, every day, every time. At 100%, it will cause problems for the DNA. That's well known, well documented. And what I did is I measured the amount. And here I just show you this bar, this increase, a 6-fold increase against the background. It means, like a 600% increase. There's always some little tiny small amount of error made, as the cells replicate, but that's background and it's not significant. But this carcinogen caused a big increase in DNA damage. Then I repeated the experiment and I first exposed the cells to something called DAA. That is the major iridoid in Noni fruit. And then I exposed them also, another group, to AA, which is the second most common iridoid and noni fruit. Exposed them to those first. Then I afterwards let them absorb those iridoids and then exposed them to this 4-NQO again. As you see here, that amount of DNA damage almost completely disappeared when these cells were first allowed to absorb the iridoids. In fact, it was a 99% reduction in DNA damage that was caused by this carcinogen. So now we knew that these iridoids actually had very strong, powerful DNA protective effects that we were seeing in the clinical trials we could repeat in these direct cell tests here. So we knew we had something very unique with Noni and very special, and that's why we were seeing the differences between the placebo and the Tahitian Noni juice. Now, we've done other work too. We did clinical trials, antioxidant studies in heavy smokers, where we actually didn't measure just the DNA damage, but we actually measured free radical levels in the blood directly. Same design, placebo had no effect. Again, the cigarette smoke was just too strong. It just was such a strong negative influence on the body that it overran any benefit from the grape and blueberry. And we'd expect the same from, an apple, orange, or acai or something like that. But the Noni actually helped mitigate that, control that, and drop that. And we saw it with as little as 1 ounce or 30 milliliters per day. Now, again, we confirmed the effects of the iridoids by doing some direct testing with the iridoids, isolated them again, conducted these experiments where we measured something called SOD, that's short for superoxide dismutase. That's an enzyme that our body produces to control free radicals. And what we saw is that as we increased the dose of the DAA, the major iridoid and noni, we saw the activity or the amount of action that this enzyme, our own body's natural enzyme, we saw it increase. And so what that told us is that some of the powerful antioxidant effects of noni come from its ability to help our body itself, protect itself, increase our own antioxidant defenses naturally. So it's not doing this artificially, but it's working to support our body. That's what we call an adaptogenic effect. Something that helps our body be able to handle stress better is an adaptogen. And noni does that quite well. And the iridoids in noni do a great job of it. So moving on to the immune system. This was one of the early research projects involving noni, is the immune system benefits. And we followed up some of the earlier research we did with a clinical trial. And we actually did this in China. And we actually, in China, had received an official certification for our noni juice in China that it boosts the immune system. That's actually the wording of the claim, is that it boosts the immune system. We had to do a lot of research, including a human trial, to demonstrate that. We had other data before, but we had to do additional data to demonstrate that to the degree that the government was comfortable with that. But this was a 2-month study. These were healthy people. They weren't sick. They were just healthy, normal people. We had them drink Tahitian Noni juice, and we saw that as they drank this over time, again, we drew blood and we measured in there measurements of what are called the adaptive immune system. That's the part that adjusts to new threats. When you get an immunization, that's the adaptive immune system being involved there. And then there's the innate immune system. That's the part that protects you and is ready to go right away. We saw an increase of 30 to 32% in both parts of the immune system with just drinking common amounts of noni juice. And we saw a decrease in oxidative stress measured in the blood as well by 19%, which we had expected from before, the studies we had done before. Again, significant effect. So this let us know that, you don't have to be sick to drink Tahitian Noni juice. If you want to stay healthy, drink Tahitian Noni juice. That's one of the benefits of it, is helping keep that immune system strong. Remember, in the smoker trials, that was the white blood cells of the immune system it was protecting. Well, if you're not smoking, I can give you lots of other reasons why it would benefit you, from pollution and so forth. And drinking it also just increases the vigilance of your immune system naturally and helps keep you healthy. Now, to verify the effects of the iridoids in there, we did this study here. And this is this NK cell activity you see here. This is natural killer cells. That's part of the innate immune system. These are cells that are floating around your body, ready to react against something, a foreign invader, and take it out so it doesn't get you sick. And we saw here, we did a study with noni extracts where we increased the dose of noni extracts and saw the natural killer cell activity increase. And here you see it says percent cytotoxicity. What that means is it was tested against some pathogenic bacteria, these cells, when we isolated them after noni had been consumed. We saw their ability to take out those pathogens increased. And then we did that with DAA, again, the major iridoid in noni. And we saw that as we increased the amount, that ability of those natural killer cells to do their job increased as well. I mentioned before about noni fruit being used when they were, Polynesians were on long ocean voyages. We confirmed that in a series of tests here, clinical trials. I need to keep track of the time here because there's so much that I could talk about, but I'm going to cover some of these human studies, and there'd be much more to cover if you read about it in that reference I gave you, as well as if you wanted to ask questions later on, some other meeting, some other time. Be happy to talk about them. But this benefit we saw in athletes as well. People, these are highly trained athletes. We did this one study we've actually done this in Russia. We've done it in Chile. We've done it in Austria. We've done it in Africa as well, in Nigeria there. We've done them in different countries around the world because we have such a big, broad reach around the world. We were able to use our contacts in these countries to get these studies done. But in this case, we had a group of endurance runners. And basically what we had them do was do a treadmill test, basically what we call time to fatigue. You get on the treadmill, the resistance increases every minute, and then you run and we time you to see how far you can go until you can't run anymore. So we got that baseline level of time to fatigue, then have them drink Tahitian Noni juice or placebo, which was blackberry juice, again, antioxidant rich, healthy fruit juice. But under these strenuous conditions, the placebo didn't do anything to increase their time to fatigue. But the noni juice did. And the noni juice had increased it by 21%. Now, this amounted to about 12 minutes. But remember, each minute, the resistance increases. So, I mean, it gets harder to run. So this was a big, significant impact in the endurance they had. And then we saw, of course, increased antioxidant activity that was associated with it that helped with that endurance as well. Then there was the study done at University of Port Harcourt. Similar study, 60 people though. This was a 1-month trial, time to fatigue, treadmill type test. What we saw in this was not only that, again, the blackberry didn't have any, the placebo didn't have any effect, but what we did see is that not only was the endurance improved and the time they could keep running was increased, but this time we measured something called creatine kinase, and it's a marker for muscle damage. And so what was seen is that noni helps protect the muscles from damage, and that's part of the endurance. Part of the increased endurance is that, and they, of course, that would have an impact on recovery after exercise for those who do that, or competition. In fact, we've had some professional athletes who've endorsed our product in years past that said it was wonderful for them. People in the NBA and the NFL had used noni juice, and it was even in the news. You know, they were on the news talking about that. But we saw that creatine kinase was decreased in those who drank noni juice versus those who weren't drinking it, and that helped protect the muscle. And a little more on the muscle protection as it relates to weight loss in a few more slides here. But we also saw that it increased something. It's your fitness level, as measured by something called VO2 max and 50 watt VO. Well, these are basically measurements of how well your cells and your body can use oxygen, can uptake oxygen and use it. So, you know, when you're more fit, the highly trained athletes have very high VO2 max compared to most of us regular people. In this group, we used cyclists, and we found that with just drinking noni juice for 2 weeks, increased VO2 max quite a bit compared to placebo, which again was a fruit juice placebo. And so we see not only protection of muscle, increased endurance, but increased fitness and increased utilization of oxygen as well. Now, Noni helps with joints. Here's one of the earlier studies done. This involved people with something called cervical spondylosis. Sort of think of this as sort of an osteoarthritis of the neck. They have limited movement, limited range of motion in their neck, and discomfort and so forth. We saw that in this trial, 1 month of drinking Noni juice improved the range of movement and pain, much more than not using it. And then it was also further, when it was combined with some standard physical therapy, it improved quite a bit beyond that as well. It potentiated that. So remember that earlier slide I showed you where I talked about how widely Noni was used among the Pacific Islanders, and combined with other potential treatments, how it had improved, and we see this here. An osteoarthritis trial done at the University of Illinois, Chicago, College of Medicine, and Swedish American Hospital. This involved 82 patients with osteoarthritis. They drank 90 mils. That's 3 ounces a day, and they saw significant improvements in pain and mobility and quality of life factors as well. Among the smoker trials, we saw that there was an effect on blood lipid levels, and the placebo didn't have any effect. Use my purity water bottle too. And as far as safety goes, we've done a lot of, sorry. And I've done a lot of safety work there too, where people drank 3/4 of a bottle of Tahitian Noni juice a day without any adverse effects on any measurement you can measure. A very comprehensive safety study. And we saw that the Noni juice and Max is the one that I mentioned that had a couple other fruits in there that have iridoids in there. And basically we took all the fruit sources of iridoids and created one product with them. What we saw, though, is a 6-week trial with 90 obese adults, and they were basically divided up into those who were had their calories restricted. All of them did, so you would lose weight. But when that happens, you not only lose fat mass, but you'll lose muscle mass. And that muscle mass loss, because of the reduced calories, the body will, it'll borrow some of the, convert some of the muscle into energy to try to compensate for that reduced calories. But what happens is that after a while, you will rebound or you'll stop losing weight because you don't have the muscle mass to help burn the calories anymore. On this trial, we saw that drinking Noni juice, whether in TNJ or Max, actually allowed these people to continue to lose weight, while the other group that didn't have that, they were doing the calorie restriction, the no Noni, they started to gain weight back after a number of weeks. But those in the TNJ and Max groups kept losing weight. And when they measured body composition, they saw that the lean muscle mass, or the lean body weight, the muscle mass, was actually conserved. They weren't losing it as fast as the other group, and that's why they were able to continue to lose weight. So if you remember, previously I talked about creatine kinase. So Noni protects muscle. It helps conserve muscle, and so that has a number of benefits, not only with weight loss and endurance, but a number of things for overall health and wellness. And we did a study in Japan. See if I can go back up. And there were about close to 4,000 people enrolled in this trial. And what we did is we estimated their iridoid intake based on how much Noni juice they were drinking every day. And we compared them to those who weren't drinking weren't eating any iridoids. They weren't using Noni or anything like that. And we measured something called AGEs. Now, AGEs are basically glycotoxins. That's what the sugar turns into eventually, the excess sugar in your diet. And they cause problems to the body, a number of them. But what we found is that the more iridoids you had in your diet, the lower your AGE levels, the lower these glycotoxins that were being produced. And so, and Noni is the significant source of these, right? So Noni will help control some of that, quite a bit, actually. And as we get older, we tend to have higher AGE levels. Interestingly, aging increases AGEs. But these advanced glycation end products, or glycotoxins, tend to accumulate more. But we see that effect dampened when you're consuming noni over time. Again, this was a very large study, almost 4,000 people. Then at the University of Hamburg in Germany, we did a number of different clinical trials with this group. One of them involved, believe it or not, gingivitis, gum health. We saw that simply drinking noni juice and swishing around with it and so forth helped decrease inflammation and bleeding of the gums. It helped reduce that quite a bit. This actually fits in with some of the traditional uses described of noni in the Pacific Islands, where they saw this effect in oral health as well. And then at the University of Hamburg again, it was a study done with type 2 diabetic patients, and 2 months of drinking noni juice decreased HbA1c. That's glycosylated hemoglobin, or your A1C levels. That's the measurement over 3 months' time of how well you're controlling your blood glucose that a lot of people are interested in to see how well you're doing, and is kind of a marker for diabetes and so forth. But they saw that that actually helped control that and reduce something called CRP, which is a marker for systemic inflammation in the body. And then it helped with glucose levels. Now, in sharing all of this with you, this is educational, of course, and we're not going to, say this is a medicine and you can expect all these benefits and to replace your medication. We're not saying that. What I'm trying to show you here is how well Tahitian Noni juice, Nuku Hiva, the wellness shots that I showed you, what these products that we make with noni in them, how well that the noni helps the body stay healthy, how well it helps support your health naturally. All these wonderful things it can do in such a broad range. And why it's unique is because of the iridoids in there, and and the other phytonutrients that work with the iridoids as well. So very unique product. Remember, noni is the original superfruit. Its history goes back thousands of years as these people took the fruit across the Pacific Islands. Now you'll see here we have the brand Tahitian Noni, we have Nuku Hiva. All of these products harken back to French Polynesia. Tahiti is an island in, of course, French Polynesia. Nuku Hiva is an island in French Polynesia. This is one of the primary source of our noni. And it's really good stuff. Remember, I was going to give it a 1-year trial. I've been doing this for 24 years. We've seen a lot of good things there. And so I just say drink it up and enjoy and use it to help support your health. Thank you, Rick.
Brett, thank you so much for being with us today. And I just want to remind everyone, we don't treat, cure, or make any claims to the extent. However, there are so many studies, and I put on my chat, if you go to www.pubmed.gov and you just type in the word noni, there are studies after studies after studies after studies about the health benefits of noni. You have every right to point people to those studies. Those are public, they're published, but we don't need to make claims to be able to sell, to share these great products. Supporting the body's immune system is a great way to be very compliant in our language. And the way I always say is, I think people are funny. I always say that. Brett, somebody says, how much should I take? It's like, okay, how many oranges should you eat? This is a superfood. So let your body be your guide. And somebody said to me, will it help with inflammation? Why not? Why not? Try it. That's how I approach it. Even though I know some of the science behind many of these products, I don't get caught up in those conversations because that just leads to unrealistic expectations, trying to make claims, trying to get caught up in that world where if somebody asks you where they should get their vitamin C from, intuitively, are they going to walk over and chew a hard pill, or are they going to go eat an orange? I mean, think of it intuitively. This is a superfood that has all of these amazing ingredients. Of course, our body's going to be responding well to it. And of course, it's going to have a health benefit for you. But what that is for each one of you, it may be different for And I see some of you on camera there, Brian. It might be different for you. Your body might be lacking in something that I'm not lacking in. Brett, do you remember in school, and I'm probably a little older than you, but do you remember that on your teacher's desk they had that clear replica of a body, and then inside you saw the veins and the arteries, and you could take out the stomach and the organs and stuff? Do you remember that model?
Yeah, I do. I was born during the Nixon administration, so you might, yeah, I'm a little younger than you, but
You're definitely younger than me.
so yeah, I do recall that. You take it apart and look at all the parts. Yes.
Yeah, my point to that is that if you picture our bodies like you could see through, it was clear, and there are gaps in whatever that system is. Maybe there's gaps in your circulatory system or your skeletal system or so on. This isn't a scientific conversation. This is like an analogy conversation. I always picture that each of us have little gaps in our health. And when somebody says, well, this helped me, it's like, why not? Because your gaps are different than mine. I think it will, but we'll see what happens. Try it. I have noticed a difference. And I think I'm a pretty healthy guy. I take a lot of vitamins every day. I'm very religious with our products. I take, just in case you wonder why I have so much energy, I take 4 Rejuvenex when I wake up in the morning before I go for my walk, and I have energy. But I love Tahitian Noni. It's one of the things that I've added to my world, and I told you I take it both in the TNJ as well as in the Nukuhiva. So Brett, thank you for sharing that today. Such great information. I hope you all enjoyed that. We'll have you on soon enough again.
All right. Sounds
cool.
good.
Yeah. Thanks again.